Israel has become the second country in history to use nuclear weapons in war, and the first to do so as an initial preemptive strike. The target? Iran. Most of Tehran, its greater metro area, and even its suburbs have been vaporized or reduced to smoldering rubble. Millions are dead, millions more are being exposed to lethal doses of radiation, and still more are suffering life-threatening burns. Israel's only remaining ally, the United States, continues to stand by Israel's preemptive nuclear strike. The US has warned Iran that any retaliation will be met with, in the president's words, overwhelming response, and that the US will, quote, turn the country into glass. We may be looking at nuclear winter as Israel continues to lash out. Okay, obviously this isn't happening right now, at time of recording. But this scenario isn't as far-fetched as you might think. A 2013 study set out to understand the medical consequences of a nuclear exchange between Iran and Israel in the near future, with a focus on the distribution of casualties in urban environments. Academics have been taking this scenario seriously for over a decade, and as the genocide in Gaza continues, it's now abundantly clear that Israel is the nation most likely to initiate a full-scale nuclear or conventional war in the region. Let's explore the consequences of a war between Israel, Iran, and their respective allies. Before we answer that, we'd like to take a quick moment to thank this episode's sponsor, Aura. As you all know, we make political content here and on our other channels. Unfortunately, that means some people don't like us very much. These days, a quick Google search is all it takes to find someone's personal information. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives, it's all readily available for those who want to find it. That's why I've been using Aura to help keep my private details private. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. This not only cuts down on the amount of spam I get, but also helps keep all my accounts safe from bad actors. And Aura does so much more. It's a VPN, a password manager, an antivirus. It even offers identity theft insurance and parental controls. And the best part is, it's all in one place and very reasonably priced. So if you're like me and you value your privacy and staying safe online, visit aura.com/firstthought and get your first 2 weeks absolutely free, no strings attached. Try it out, and I promise you'll appreciate the peace of mind. Support the show and protect your valuable data by signing up today at the link below. It's not just academics evaluating the potential consequences of a war between Iran and Israel. The United States Department of Defense conducts virtual and live war games to plan for any number of scenarios, and a war with Iran was simulated in 2002 in an exercise dubbed the Millennium Challenge. The results were interesting, to say the least. The Pentagon asked retired Marine Corps General Paul Van Riper to command the Iranian or Red Forces due to his reputation for unorthodox thinking. Faced with the imminent preemptive US attack, Van Riper decided to go on the offensive as soon as US forces, including 2 aircraft carriers, 6 amphibious ships, and their combined escorts, bore down on him. Van Riper actually wanted to win the exercise, which is an accurate portrayal of Iranian leaders, and therefore refused to let the American preemptive strike succeed. Van Riper managed to sink the entire fleet, including the Marine Landing Force. The exercise was effectively over as soon as it began. Following this humiliating defeat, the US brass instructed Van Riper that he could not shoot down the aircraft flying cover missions for their ground forces, that their offensive weapons weren't allowed to be hidden, and that they couldn't use chemical warfare against the Blue Team's paratroopers. Van Riper was so disgusted with how controllers were running the exercise, tying the hands of his Red Team to ensure Blue won, that he sat the rest of it out. With these remarkable handicaps in place, the US succeeded in destroying Iran's military capabilities. The exercise demonstrated that the US was inflexible and wasn't able to think quickly in response to the offensive response to the preemptive attack, and that this would not serve the US well in an actual conflict. This simulation, as well as the resistance strike on Israel on October 7th, shows that no matter how much sophisticated technology your military utilizes, innovative warfare combined with adaptability can be just as lethal. Since even the arrogant US recognizes that Iran is a formidable force, let's examine their military industry from its early days till today as it continues to thrive despite heavy sanctions. Iran's defense apparatus began with the establishment of Iran Electronics Industries, or IEI, in 1973. In the decades since, IEI, focused on developing the country's military capabilities, has created many high-quality, homegrown weapons. Examples include the Akbar 7.62mm Gatling gun, capable of firing 4,000 to 6,000 rounds per minute, as well as the Arman anti-ballistic missile system, which can simultaneously engage 6 targets from up to 180 kilometers away. There's also the Fatah, a hypersonic ballistic missile with a range of 1,400 kilometers and a top speed of Mach 15, a staggering 5.1 kilometers per second. Since speeds that high are difficult to comprehend, it would be like flying from the Pentagon to the White House in 1 second, or crossing the Strait of Dover, 32 kilometers or 20 miles wide, in just 6 seconds. As if this isn't impressive enough, remember, all of this is being accomplished under a severe sanctions regime. However, these are the accomplishments of just one company. Iran possesses the largest inventory of missiles in West Asia, with a significant number being ballistic missiles specifically. Clearly, this hasn't been accomplished through the efforts of a single company. As a whole, Iran's defense ministry is focused on developing and stockpiling missile systems, naval platforms, assorted weapons, and air defenses while revitalizing its aging air and ground capabilities. It's geared towards supporting Iran's overall military strategy, which is centered around deterrence and retaliatory capabilities, utilizing unconventional warfare operations and a network of militant partners and proxies. But how is it pulling all this off under the suffocating sanctions regime? The answer can be summed up in 2 words: reverse engineering. Having been forced to transition away from importing weapons and technology, Iran has become arguably the most successful country at reverse engineering and developing its military equipment based on examples of enemy, mostly US, weapons in the field. Additionally, collaboration between Iran and Russia has seen a transfer of Western weapon systems for research and development, enabling Iran to drastically enhance its military capabilities. For example, reports indicate that Iran's successful Sadid 365 anti-tank guided missile was allegedly reverse engineered from American defense systems. The Ra'ad 2 self-propelled howitzer exemplifies Iran's dedication to maintaining legacy weapon systems through the same reverse engineering, while combining various bits of foreign hardware. And of course, we can't forget to mention Iranian drones, which have been in the news quite a bit due to their use by Russia in Ukraine and resistance groups in and around Palestine. Iranian drones have earned their place because of their versatility, low price of manufacture, and effectiveness. They can carry out an assortment of missions, including surveillance, reconnaissance, and attacks. This makes them an extremely valuable asset for Iran, since they don't have a traditional air force with fighters and bombers. Additionally, the country has emphasized its goal to improve the accuracy, lethality, and over-the-horizon capabilities of its drones. But Iran hasn't just been building weapons and drones. They've also built state-of-the-art bases from which they can conduct their operations. Recently, Iran unveiled one such structure to the world, the Parchin Underground Facility. Located approximately 20 kilometers southeast of downtown Tehran, the Parchin facility reflects Iran's efforts to significantly enhance its homegrown military capabilities. While the work that goes on in the facility is not publicly available information, we know it's connected to the larger Parchin military complex. It's believed that the complex includes a large network of tunnels which might allow for additional military modalities not before moved underground, such as supply chains, which are otherwise vulnerable to attacks. The Parchin military complex is most notable for being the hub of Iran's nuclear science and defense technologies. While Iran does not possess nuclear weapons, government officials in Israel and the United States have repeatedly expressed grave concern about the Iranian nuclear program, despite the latter pulling out of the long-sought Iran nuclear deal signed during the Obama regime. Iranian weapons have been and continue to be used in modern warfare in various conflicts and by various actors. They've obviously been utilized by Iran's own military forces, but more importantly by Iranian-backed groups in conflicts across West Asia, most notably by Lebanon's Hezbollah and Yemen's Ansar Allah. However, the scope of their use in modern warfare can be seen in Syria, where Iranian drones, missiles, and small arms have been used extensively in the Syrian civil war to support Assad and other pro-government forces. Iran has provided military aid to the Syrian government and deployed its forces, including the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, in the conflict. It can also be seen in Yemen, where they've supplied Ansar Allah with drones and ballistic missiles. These weapons have been used in attacks against Saudi Arabia, and more recently, in attacks on any ship attempting to do business with the Israeli colonial project. In Iraq, militias have been equipped with Iranian air defense systems and small arms, and have used them in the fight against ISIS and in other internal conflicts. And last but not least, in Lebanon, several varieties of rockets with differing ranges and capabilities have been used by Hezbollah against Israel and other regional adversaries. One variant, the Haseb rocket, has a range of 8 to 10 kilometers and an 8 kg high-explosive warhead, and is modeled on the Chinese Type 63 multiple rocket launcher. With such a short range, these are best used against ground forces. The Ra'ad or Thunder rockets are wire-guided anti-tank missiles based on the Soviet 9M-14M Malyutka and have a range of 350 kilometers, roughly the distance between Washington, D.C. and New York City. The Fajr, or Dawn rockets, actually comprise their own family, with the three major types being a long-range missile with a range of 180 kilometers, a 240mm artillery with a range of 43 kilometers, and a 333mm multiple rocket launcher system primarily used to support ground troops, strategic strikes, and for their psychological impact given the volume and intensity of the bombardment they can unleash. Lastly, the Zelzal, or Earthquake, rockets are the longest range of their non-hypersonic missiles, with a range of 200 kilometers, or roughly the distance between LA and San Diego. It comes in two variants, the 2 and 3. The Zelzal 3 is a guided missile, and must be launched using a specialized transporter erector, and are used as general artillery shells. The Zelzal 2, on the other hand, is an unguided, truck-launched rocket primarily used against armored vehicles, including the Israeli Merkava main battle tank, and buildings occupied by infantry units. The rocket delivers a massive 600 kg payload. Iran's arsenal of homegrown weaponry is formidable. With all this firepower, it's not hard to see why the US lost so badly in their simulation. Since any war waged against Israel is also a war against the United States, and since the US is still the sole world superpower, we should unpack what the cost of such a war would be to the US, and by extension, the world. In order to keep this in line with most projections, we're going to assume conventional, not nuclear warfare, as do all of our sources. It goes without saying that any nuclear exchange would cause immeasurable damage and suffering for decades, possibly centuries. So let's start with the raw dollar amount, if only to show how futile it is to even attempt to nail down actual figures. A full-scale US invasion of Iran has been estimated to cost $1.7 trillion, according to a report by the Federation of American Scientists. This includes expenses related to troop deployments, equipment, logistics, and other military expenditures. Note that this is just for the invasion of the country. It says nothing about any long-term presence, which is nearly impossible to quantify given the number of unknowns. Fully estimating the cost of a US war with Iran not only includes the immediate expenses of military operations, but also the long-term cost associated with post-conflict reconstruction in both nations, extreme damage to the US economy, and the untold loss of life. The monetary cost would easily run into the many trillions of dollars, straining the US economy and hyper-focusing US spending on the military even more than it already does, possibly to the point of completely giving up its responsibility to other vital areas, such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure. Unfortunately for the rest of the world, a lasting conflict with Iran would have wide-ranging implications for the global economy. It would lead to broad economic and financial shocks that would significantly worsen with time and evolving conditions. The resulting collapse of Iran's economy would see a reduction of the global GDP of as much as 0.3 percentage points, which doesn't sound like much, but would be a tremendous shock. A prolonged conflict would create unprecedented uncertainty in global financial markets, leading to increased volatility in stock prices, exchange rates, and commodity markets. This uncertainty would shake investor and consumer confidence to the core, affecting global economic growth and leading to a slowdown in business expansion and hiring. The world economy is highly reliant on key trade routes, particularly in the Strait of Hormuz, a strategically important passage that connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman, through which approximately 1/5 of the world's oil passes. Such disruptions would lead to supply chain failures, ballooning shipping costs. And if that wasn't enough, a US-Iran conflict could trigger an escalation of proxy warfare in countries like Syria and Yemen. It could also lead to the creation of new proxy conflicts, as well as prompt Iranian missile strikes and other attacks on US allies in the region. The economic impact of a conflict with Iran would extend beyond direct financial costs. It would lead to the deaths of an untold number of innocent people, trade agreements would be destroyed, and global geopolitical dynamics would be unrecognizable. If you're a US citizen, you may well ask, what could we get instead of a costly, unnecessary war with Iran? Well, we're glad you asked. According to a study by the Political Economy Research Institute, Medicare for All would cost approximately $37.8 trillion between 2017 and 2026. That would be approximately $3.78 trillion per year. While that is a lot, you could get 3 invasions of Iran for that. Consider this. In 2021, US citizens spent $4.3 trillion, or $12,914 per capita on healthcare which doesn't cover everyone and severely underinsures most of the rest. In fact, you could add free college, which would only cost a comparatively tiny $680 billion per year, and still spend less money than Americans spent on healthcare in 2021. That is obscene. The bottom line is, the United States has better things to spend its vast, unprecedented wealth on than more wars. If the US were to allow Israel to drag it into a conflict with Iran, it's probably safe to say, without hyperbole, it would be the end of the world as we understand it. Episodes like this one are made possible thanks to our generous patrons on Patreon. If you'd like to help support the show, and get some great perks while you're at it, consider becoming a patron. Perks include access to our Discord server, early access to videos, ad-free episodes, and more. You can help us keep the channel afloat by becoming a patron at patreon.com/firstthought. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.